Hello and welcome. You're listening to 103.2 Dublin City FM. My name is Doug Gordon. I'm host of the show, Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. The aim of the show is to interview inspiring people who've either been successful in their field or inspired others to success in some form. Today's guest is Ryan Nurse. Ryan is a life coach, an inspirational speaker, and a soon-to-be author. Ryan, 10 years ago, had a traumatic brain injury that led to a coma and in turn a near-death experience. He then went through years of serious depression until he eventually quit his job to follow his true passion and purpose in life. He now coaches people to connect to their true selves in order to complete their true missions in life too. I've had the honour of sharing a stage with him, and I have to say, he really is a true inspiration and a pleasure to have on the show. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hello, Doug, and thank you so much for having me. And what a beautiful and an amazing intro you just gave me there. So thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. I've enjoyed hearing your story over and over again on Clubhouse, and so many people always want to hear it, and you say it so well, and you deliver it better and better and better each time as well. So I was inspired by the story, and having had a near-death experience myself, I really wanted to get you on the show and find out more so we can share with people to understand what it's all about. So I'd love you to share with the audience just a little bit about how you had the traumatic brain injury that led to the coma and the near-death experience.
Yeah, of course. And I really, really thank you again for allowing me this space, Doug, to share my journey. So back in 2011, as an 18-year-old boy, I went to a nightclub and I was attacked on the way home from this nightclub. So at the local club, I was having the best time of my life with some friends. The music was pumping, the moves, the dance moves were we were dancing away. And yeah, we just had an incredible evening with each other. The excitement and the joy was just, oh my God, like just imagine, Doug, like back to those years when you was 18 years old, like all of that excitement and joy and fun. And this lasted, say, the whole evening until the time that we decided to go home. So we got in a taxi in the car park to obviously make our way home back to the safety of our own home. And as we did, we was extracted from the taxi by a group of older men. And after this discussion and this debate we was having with these guys, like this disagreement, as to say, we just decided that let's just find another, say, alternative route to get home. So we just got in a separate taxi. But as we say, left the club car park, we made a left turn and then another left turn onto this dark and unlit road. But then as we sort of was driving down there, we noticed straight away that the headlights of this taxi or this other taxi that we just got, say, extracted from was right behind us, and it just filled the whole of our vehicle. So straight away we went from being excited to just go home to like fearful, nervous, worry. And now we're thinking, what's going to happen next? And then suddenly, our taxi driver received a call on his walkie-talkie demanding that he pulled over. And again, we're just asking our driver, like, why are you slowing down? Like, what's the reason? Why are you slowing down? And we was just nervous. We was scared. And then there was silence. Our driver pulled over and stopped. And then there was this knock on the passenger front window. And as my friend opened the window, he began to get beaten through the window. So I was scared and I opened my door to try and say, stop this madness. But as I did, my door was ripped open and I was greeted with the same fist. I hadn't even had chance to take my seatbelt off. Have you ever been in a car, Doug, and the seatbelt is locked on and you're literally glued to the back of your seat?
Mm.
And that was me. I was literally like a sitting duck.
Mm.
I was sat there whilst being pounded in the side of my head. It was like a hammer to the side of my fragile skull. And all I was thinking was, Ryan, you need to get this seatbelt undone. And at one point, honestly, through my mind was like, this is it. This is how you are going to die. And I thought, no, that's not going to be the case. I'm not going to let that be the case. So I was so focused on, say, getting this seatbelt, the buckle undone, the clasp undone. And in my mind, it was saying, Ryan, you need to get this belt undone. Ryan, you need to get this belt undone. And then, thankfully, I got this belt undone. And straight away, I remember I just grabbed the driver's rear door handle from the inside, opened the door, and I just made my way down a separate road opposite. And I called for help. And soon after, some friends arrived to pick me up, to take me back to the safety of my own home. And I remember the whole journey back, my friends kept repeating and saying, Ryan, let's take you to hospital. They were adamant that they were going to take me to hospital. And I honestly thought, because I had a few drinks and I'd just been beaten up, that everything would be okay in the morning. Like all of this persistent pain would say it would be okay in the morning. And as I was, say, sat in the back of my friend's car, I couldn't actually keep my head up because of the weight of my heavy head. And the only thing I can compare it to is, say, when you're on an aeroplane and you fall asleep and you just notice yourself nodding down. I remember my head was just dropping due to the weight of my spinning heavy head. It was like a gyroscopic feeling. It was just going round and round, and I kept falling down. And again, because there was no, say, signs of physical trauma, there was no blood or bruising, I thought everything would be fine in the morning. So I went back to my bed, I went back home, and I didn't tell any of my family or parents, and I just went to sleep. But then my parents failed to wake me up the next morning. And with that being said, I was rushed to the local hospital, where after a not long period of being there, I ended up getting transferred to a separate hospital, where I had to be rushed in for an emergency brain operation, where I suffered from a fractured skull and a blood clot due to a bleed on the brain.
Wow.
And when my parents finally managed to see me later that evening, I was put into an induced coma due to the severity of my injuries. And the specialist that done the work on me told my parents that I would be very lucky to survive the night.
Mm.
However, 3 days in, I was still being kept alive by this life support machine. And on the third day, my parents were called and brought to the hospital, where they were gathered in this separate room. And there and then, the specialist that done the work on me said to my parents that he would highly suggest they switch the life support machine off, as there was zero brain activity. But there and then, my dad ultimately saved my life, because he stood up. He said, no way is that going to happen. Like, I know Ryan more than anybody else on this planet. And he said, Ryan takes his own time to do anything. You just need to give him time, because he is so stubborn. Everything he does is on Ryan time. So just give him that time. And thankfully for me, my dad ultimately saved my life.
Wow.
And the very first time that I obviously woke up, I was gifted an out-of-body experience whilst in a coma.
I'd love to hear about that, obviously, because, you know, there's so many people that had near-death experience and out-of-body experience, and we've discussed this. And just the way you tell it in terms of looking down at yourself, I'd love the audience to hear. Yeah,
thank you, Doug. And again, I'm not going to go into too deep. I'm going to tell you the main parts of this. So basically, I was in this out-of-body experience where I was viewing myself through the eyes of my creator. And after being, say, dropped through this secret portal or flap into another universe or another dimension, I was just watching myself from above, just laying there in this hospital bed. And there was doctors and surgeons working on my, say, immobile body. They were working on my head, and I was just watching slightly from above. But there was no pain in this place. It was just all peace. Peace. It was so peaceful. And I just sat there or floated there, or wherever I was there above, just watching as I lay there being operated on. And there was no time or there was no boundaries in this place. Like, things just seemed to go on forever. And I could have been watching, let's say, for an hour, a day, a year. I don't know. It just was like forever. But then suddenly these people that were, say, operating and working on me to fix me, they just dissipated. They just left. So they obviously finished what they were doing and they just left. And I just watched them all disappear. But then as they did, these, say, eyes where I was viewing this whole experience through almost got sucked into my head. It was like there was a hoover inside my head and it just sucked these eyes back into my skull. And I was just now viewing this whole experience through my eyes. And I lay there and all I was surrounded by was just this white. There was this huge curtain that surrounded me. And again, the time just was forever. I waited forever.
Wow.
And I remember these curtains slowly just began to open in front of me. And as they did, this supernatural bright white light shone through with such intensity, it was literally blinding to the point where I closed my eyes. And as I closed my eyes, I just waited and waited and waited. And it started to, say, reduce, the intensity reduced to the point where I could obviously now open my eyes. And then when I opened my eyes, this is when something unexplainable happened. What I saw now was just, wow, like, wow. I looked out in front and all I saw was every single face that I'd ever seen in my life. So it could be, say, someone that I'd bumped into down the street in London, for instance. It could be an old school friend. But then right at the very front of my bed, as I watched, was all of my immediate loved ones, the people that meant the most to me. So it was my parents, my siblings, my grandparents. And they were all stood there watching me. But what I noticed was that every single face was crying. It was just tears coming from every face. Everywhere I looked, there was just tears. And I was panicking. I was nervous. I was thinking, what do I do? So I was trying to grab the attention of these people. I was waving, I was shouting, but nothing was coming out. They wasn't seeing what I was doing. And this went on forever, it felt like. I remember I was just waving and they just looked right through me. And then I give up. I laid back on the pillow and I just cried and I give up. And as I lay there, this hoover, this vacuum sensation it happened again, but from the opposite way. So not inside my head, it was from the outside now, like a hoover was on the top of my head. And it sucked these eyes and this whole experience out of my head. And it took the whole bright white light with it. And then there was just darkness again. And all I heard in the distance was just a beep, beep, beep noise. And I thought it was my alarm clock, in all honesty. I thought it was my alarm clock. Ryan, you need to wake up now for work or something. And this alarm clock sound got louder and more intense. And I listened and it got beep, beep, beep. And it was so strong. Obviously, I began to wake up. And then I noticed that my body went from, say, being really cold to starting to warm up to the point where I actually opened my eyes. And now I am back on Earth, back in this real reality, what we are living now.
Wow.
And wow, I remember I looked down on myself and I saw, say, all of the needles, all of the pads, all of the tubes penetrating my body. And this beeping noise was still going on. And as I turned my head to the left, I realised that this was the machine beeping that was keeping me alive.
Mm.
And then suddenly all of those, say, memories prior to that night of being attacked come flooding back. And I remembered every single thing. And then again, I laid back and I cried myself to sleep. And it was horrible because I remembered every single thing that happened.
And Ryan, one of the things that we chatted about offline before was when you saw those faces, and people often talk about this when they have near-death experience, they see a flashback of everybody they've ever met or everything they've ever done. And you said that they were crying, and we both discussed the possibility of maybe that was because you were so young and you hadn't completed what your true mission is in life yet. And it was such a near-death experience that the emotion was coming out, within you, but in terms of within everybody you've ever met as well. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, Doug, I totally agree. So for me, I hadn't even gone into this whole experience, like what I went through in hospital, only until this whole COVID lockdown, 2020, mid-2020, let's say, I decided to say, look into my journey, because I kept that experience, that near-death experience within, say, me and within my mind. And I never told anybody. But then once I started to do a bit of research on it and sort of really look deep into what it really meant, I thought, you know what, this is my purpose. Because growing up as, say, a young child, I remember death was something that I feared for my whole childhood. I remember crying my eyes to sleep as a 10-year-old child, thinking that one day I'm going to die and I will never, say, see or hear my family ever again. It used to petrify me. But then going through this near-death experience or out-of-body experience that I was gifted, I now realise that this is my purpose of life. This is my calling. And I was sent back to complete, to say, the mission that I was put on this earth to do, because that is the reason why my life got spared, because I hadn't completed the job that I was sent to do. And Doug, the sad thing is that so many people in the situation where I was in, their loved ones had the same question given to them. We should switch off the life support machine, say, of your child, of your sister, of your uncle, of, I don't know, a lifelong friend. And you've been given that. And they've made the decision to listen to, say, the doctors, the specialists, because that's what we do in life. If we want, say, our car fixed, we see a mechanic. If we want our radiator fixed, we go and see a plumber. But if we want us fixed, we obviously seek the advice of a doctor. But let me tell you that no doctor can ever put a definite deadline on your dreaded day of demise. Because don't get me wrong, I'm not undermining the ability of doctors. They're amazing. Like, doctors saved my life. But how many times have we heard stories of people going to live 10 years longer, but then they die in a year's time? But then on the flip side, how many times have we heard the stories of people who are going to, say, live 1 year, but then they've gone on to live another 10 years? Like, we don't know when our, say, day of death is. Like, nobody can predict your day of death ever.
100%. And I, having had a near-death experience as well, I totally agree with you. And I think, well, in fact, I know that, it's important when people realize that, you have the ability to control your own life in terms of mind, body, and soul. And when you're looking after that mind, body, and soul in the best possible way, you put yourself in the best possible energetic state, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then you've got a much better chance of living a very, very long life, if that's what you want. So you obviously came back, and I know it's interesting that you said, you kind of suppressed it. You suppressed the trauma for quite some time, and just till recently, and that was probably about 10 years. And then now you started looking at it. But you said, I know you also went through depression for quite some time. And I do wonder whether, that depression was there because you weren't following your true path after you came out of the experience. And it was almost your higher self, your soul, whatever you believe in, or even your own subconscious saying to you, oi, you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. And then this was kind of a conflict within, and that conflict caused depression. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, Doug, I agree with you. So a little bit of story, obviously, after coming out of that whole experience in the hospital, I went on to meet, which is now my ex-partner. And we lived this, say, amazing life. From an outsider's point of view, we was living, say, an incredible life. And that whole trauma that I experienced in hospital, I just put it all behind me. Because I was living this relationship with an amazing person, and I was so excited, so happy. Again, I boxed up and buried every single thing that had happened to me. And it was like nothing had ever happened. Like, only just a few months prior, I was knocking on death's doors. And now I'm traveling the world with, say, this amazing person. 6.5 years went by in this relationship where she decided that she didn't want to be with me anymore, which was, say, the start of my depression, when I realised that it was just me on my own. And at that point in time, I actually hated my own company. I hated the sound of silence. And there's a story behind it. But at one point, all I had was, say, the sound of my own voice and my own company. And I suffered from months of mental misery. But later, I managed to flip this around into a positive. And it was just one single thought that completely transformed my life. And that thought said to me, I was there, and every single weekend I'd just be crying my eyes out because I didn't know what to do with my life. I'd turned to drink and drugs, etc. Like, my life was spiraling downhill so rapidly, prescribed antidepressants, etc., which I refused to take. And again, there's a whole story on this, but the one single thought that transformed my life said, could I live with the thought of dying with regrets?
And that's what your title of your book is as well, if I remember.
Yeah, correct. I'm currently writing that book because when that thought went through my mind, Doug, I literally held on to that like a magnet. And I kept asking myself that question. And then I realised that, say, I'd overcome a lot of, say, major traumas in my life already. Like, I was on death's doors. And at one point in life, when I was going through this whole depression, death was, say, a desired destination for me. I actually wanted to die some days. I didn't want to wake up. That's how bad things were. But then when I started to realise that, say, all of these obstacles that I'd overcome already, I thought, you know what, Ryan, you can overcome anything in your life. And then rather than, say, looking at all of the negatives in my life, I started to look at all the positives because I realised that the nightmare that I was going through was actually a dream for somebody else. And that's when I started to practice this daily gratitude because I didn't even know what gratitude meant at that time, but I was practicing it. And I noticed that these small, amazing things started to attract towards me, which turned my life around.
So true, isn't it? I think when people open themselves up to be grateful for even the smallest things that they have, it almost opens yourself up to receive more. I always say that, if you ever give a child a present, the child isn't grateful, you don't feel like giving that child anything else. So it's the same with the universe, God, or even your own subconscious. If you're not grateful for even the smallest things, why would the universe give you anything else? So yeah, I love that, Ryan. It's brilliant. And you've obviously gone on now and you've started like coaching people and consulting and helping people in terms of inspiring them to be able to connect with their true selves in order to complete their true missions in life. Tell us a little about what you do and also tell us how can people get in touch with you as well?
Yeah, Doug, thank you so much. So, yeah, leading on to this is obviously now I'm following my true purpose, my mission, my purpose. This is what I was put on this earth to do. So now I help confused, eager adults gain clarity in their lives, find their sense of direction, and assist them with creating a clear and concise roadmap towards a future of fulfillment. So the best way that you can connect with me or find me is on Instagram at @RyanNurse_.
Yeah, and I've seen you. And anybody who hasn't met Ryan, come onto Clubhouse and come onto the Winners Club. He's on there every morning. I think, I don't know what time, probably from about 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the morning, helping inspiring the rest of the team there in terms of, inspiration and entrepreneurship as well. There's a lot of stuff like that as well. And, so obviously in terms of depression, you came out of depression, you've gone through a near-death experience, you were in a coma, you were assaulted, and now you're getting into aligned to your true self. What do you think have been the key learnings that you've had over these years?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, Doug. So I think the key learning for me over, say, all of this, say, trauma, I guess, is really trust your gut. Because my gut was screaming all the answers to me and I wouldn't trust my gut. And I honestly believe that your gut is telling you, say, what your head hasn't already figured out yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's amazing. They sometimes say that you've got 3 brains. You're the one in your head, the one in your heart, and the one in your gut. And you need to listen to them all at different time periods and everything like that, which is obviously what you've learned and you're doing now as well. And, where do you see Ryan Nurse now in the next few years?
Yeah, I love that, Doug. So at the moment, I'm on this journey of, say, self-discovery and improving myself on a daily basis. So in the upcoming future years, I see myself on stages all over the globe and globally, say, inspiring, transforming and, say, inspiring lives all around the world to become the best versions of themselves.
Well, you're already doing that on a virtual basis on Clubhouse almost every single day, whether it be in the Winners Club or be in, I've seen you in many other different rooms as well in terms of mental wellness and trauma and everything like that. And I think that's where we first met as well, where we were coaching people in terms of their sense of purpose and getting through trauma and everything. And what I love about you, Ryan, is that you are only 28 years of age, but your improvement in terms of your delivery, your communication, and your story has just got better and better and better the more I've heard you. And it just shows, and that's in a very short space of time, it just shows how much you work on yourself every day. And I think if everybody was to work on themselves in terms of self-love and emotional intelligence and learning to be a better version of themselves every day, they could have a lot to learn by listening to your good self as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And look, if anybody wants to get hold of Ryan, get hold of him on his Instagram. As I said earlier on, he is a superb life coach. He's an inspirational speaker. He's been speaking in front of stages of 500 to 1,000 people on Clubhouse on a regular basis, sharing his story. And he's inspired me and he's inspired many others as well. Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I wish you every success going forward.
Doug, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody that's going to listen to this as well. So thank you again.
My pleasure. My name's Doug Gordon, and you've been listening to Ryan Nurse on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'll be back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me on inspirational@dublincidifm.ie. From all of us here on the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational weekend and look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye for now.